Thank you so much, Tal and Agit. The reason we were quiet is because we wanted more. It was too beautiful. So what you played for us today is the melody by Gluck from Orphée et Eurydice, which is perfectly fitting for today's moment. So, Excellencies, honorable guest, dear Mrs. Hartwig, Mrs. Wenzel, Mr. Becker, Rabbi Susan, Cantor Genun, Mr. Grumbaum, all members of the Consular Corps, colleagues and friends, ladies and gentlemen, and of course, dear Diane, dear Philippe. You are all welcome to the commemoration of the International Holocaust Remembrance Day here at the European Central Bank. Today marks the 81st anniversary of the liberation of the concentration and extermination camp of Auschwitz-Birkenau. The day calls us to pause, to reflect, and to honor the memory of the millions of innocent lives that were lost, and to reaffirm our commitment to keeping their memory alive. This commemoration is especially meaningful here at the Grossmarkthalle, which was used as a deportation site for over 10,000 Jews from Frankfurt and its surroundings. It is now a place of remembrance and resolve, a place where we protect, and we have the mission and the duty to do so, dignity, equality, and freedom. Today, I'm deeply honored to introduce our guest of honor and a dear friend, Diane von Fürstenberg, a remarkable woman whose life and work embody the values of resilience, creativity, advocacy, and generosity. I could have invited Diane for multiple reasons, but she is here tonight because of a particular person, and she will tell us more about it. Diane is not only celebrated around the world as a global icon in the world of fashion. Anybody has heard about the wrap dress? Yeah, of course. Thank you. But she's also a tireless champion of human rights and Holocaust remembrance. Diane carries a very deeply personal connection to the Shoah and its consequences, which she will tell us about shortly. Diane's philanthropic work has supported countless initiatives aimed at empowering individuals, particularly so women, and we are all in debt with you, Diane, as a result. But you've also led initiatives to foster cultural preservations, promoting dialogue on the importance of remembering the past, but not just that, also building the future. Diane's iconic creativity and spirit have transformed the fashion industry, but her dedication to the social good and her advocacy for resilience and remembrance make her contributions truly extraordinary, and we are privileged to welcome her now for a little bit of sharing of whatever she wants to share with us on this very special day. Diane, we welcome you.
Hello.
So, as I said earlier on, there could have been 1,000 reasons to invite you. But you're here today particularly because of one person, your mother.
Yes.
Tell us.
So, at the age of 21, my mother was arrested. She was living in Belgium. And she was doing resistance. And she got caught. And she was taken. And she was arrested. And she was very much afraid that they were going to torture her to find out who the other resistants were. So she said, I'm Jewish, I don't know anything. And the woman there at the police say, don't say that because they will ship you. And she was Jewish and they did ship her. So she, okay, so I'll take you through the trip. So first they were arrested and they went to a prison, which was a beautiful military school. And they waited there until they were 1,000, and then they would be shipped in cattle trains. But it was already 1944, and so they couldn't wait to get. They couldn't have 1,000. So in her convoy, there were only 506. So those cattle trains were pretty bad because they didn't have windows. In order to go from Belgium to Auschwitz would take four days. No water, no food. It was pretty bad. She always said that was actually the worst. It was really, really bad. In that cattle train, she became friends with a woman who was older, and who spoke a little German. So she said, no matter what happens, I am not leaving this woman. So she stayed with this woman, and it was pretty bad. And anyway, one morning, early in the morning, they arrived at Auschwitz-Birkenau. And there was a big line. They put him in a big line. And there was a soldier who would say, you go right, you go left. There was a selection. And behind the soldier, on an elevated podium, there was a man all dressed in white, who clearly was of a higher rank. It turned out it was Joseph Mengele. And he didn't move. He was there, just not moving. When the time came to select my mother's friend, the soldiers say, you go right. And my mother, without being told what to do, followed the woman. Joseph Mengele, who had not moved the whole time, came down, took her, whipped her, and threw her on the other side. And my mother looked at him and she said, she never could imagine that there could be so much hate. Well, it turned out that he saved her life. So one of the lessons that my mother always told me is that you never know. So, in a sense, I'm alive because
of him.
Of Mengele. Anyway, I'm making it very dramatic, but it is dramatic. So she went in. She was young, and so she did work. She worked at Birkenau in a Krupp bullet factory, and at night she would sleep in Auschwitz. Then the war was getting end. Then there was the death march. She did the death march.
Can you tell us what is the death march?
Well, I'm not quite sure. The death march is where I know it was January or February, because it was very cold and there was snow. And it was called the death march because a lot of people didn't make it and died. And so, but she made it. And then the next camp was Ravensbrück. I'm not sure exactly how long she stayed in Ravensbrück. And then she was brought to a smaller camp, Neustadt Castle. And that's where eventually she was liberated. First, one day the Russian came and raped pretty much everybody, and then the Americans. So she survived. She went back to Belgium. Her mother could not believe that she came back. Everybody thought she was dead.
Can you tell us how much you... Yeah.
She weighed 29 kilos. Her mother took her and fed her like a little bird, a little bit every 5 minutes, you know, so that she wouldn't. And within 6 months, she was pretty much normal. She was always tiny, but she was normal. And her fiancé, who had been in Switzerland during the war, came back. They met. They got married. And the doctor said, you absolutely cannot have a child for two or 3 years, because you will die and your child will not be normal. And sure enough, a year later, I was born. And I was not totally normal. And so that's the story of my birth. My mother used to say, God saved me so that I can give you life. By giving you life, you gave me my life back. You are my torch of freedom. So I was born with a torch of freedom in my hand, which you could think it's a little heavy for a little girl, but I like that responsibility. She was very, she really, I mean, she would not allow me to be afraid. I was not allowed to be afraid. If I was afraid of the dark, she would lock me in the dark closet. Today she would go to jail for that. But as a result, I'm not afraid. The other thing she taught me is never be a victim. Never be a victim, you know? And basically what she taught me, what she gave me, is the responsibility of myself. And so, you know, recently I was on a panel with a bunch of women who had gone through horrible things. I mean, their family had been slaughtered in front of them and all of that. And I was the last one. And the question was, what is the most audacious thing you've ever done? And next to those poor people who had all these tragedies, I was thinking, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? And then I came up with a great answer. The most audacious thing I did was being born. Because when I was born, I had already won. And therefore life was my biggest triumph. And my duty in life is to honor life. And that's why that's what I would like to do today. I mean, it's a Holocaust Remember Day. It's a terrible thing, it is, it's dark, it's awful, how could it be, whatever. But I think that out of, you know, we cannot forget the light, because the light is the most important thing. You know, even in the dark, you look for the light, you bring in the light, you cherish the light, you share the light. Because it's always the light that pushes the darkness away. And that's, I mean, I came here because Christine asked me, and I said, but let's talk also about the light.
For those who don't know, by the way, Diane was the person who raised a lot of money in order to make sure that the Lady of Freedom, Torch of Liberty, would be entirely redone, refurbished, renovated, and would stand
the Statue of Liberty.
La Statue de la Liberté, yeah. Diane, your parents came from different origins. Your mother from Thessaloniki, yeah, and your father from what is now Moldavia. And they were both different and didn't go through the same ordeal. Did they talk about that period of their respective life when you were a little kid?
Well, first of all, do you mean about where they were born or during the war?
What they went through afterwards.
Oh, no, my mother, well, first of all, when I was a little girl, she had the number tattooed on her. But, so she had that removed. So I knew she had been to the camps, but it was very, first of all, when she arrived, Oh, I should talk about the little notes.
Yes, please.
Okay.
I was going to ask you.
So she used to she didn't talk very much about it, you know, and she used to say, I mean, she would talk about it almost like boarding school things. Oh, I wanted so much a plate of spaghetti. You know, I mean, she wanted to protect me. She never gave me the dark side. But she did say that when she was, so you get arrested, you're in a truck, and you go to the prison. She stayed in the prison for 10 days, and then back in the truck to go to the train. So twice she was in the truck. And she did tell me that when she was in the truck, she tore a piece of cardboard and wrote a note to her parents with a match, with a burn match. I totally never believed it. I never believed it at all. And but after she died, the last 10 years of her life, the winter of her life, she spent it in the Bahamas. She had a beautiful house by the sea in the Bahamas. And so after she died, I had invited my cousin, who is the son of my mother's older sister. And he had come, he stayed there for 2 weeks, and he left a shoebox full of photographs. And so next time I went there, I looked at the photographs. I knew most of the photographs. But at the end, at the bottom of the box, I saw this very, very, very flat envelope. And it was written Lily, that was her name, Lily 1944 or 45. And I looked, I opened, and there were those 2 notes. And I must say, it's hard, I don't get emotional quickly, but I couldn't believe it. And I started to read it, and it was addressed to her parents. And she said, my dear parents, I want you to know that I'm fine. I don't know where I'm going, but I want you to know I'm leaving with a smile. And so I put them aside. I went down to the beach. I went in the clear blue water. And I talked to myself, because I do that a lot. And I talked to myself and I said, this is who I am. I am the daughter of someone who went to the camp with a smile. Of course, she did not go to the camp with a smile, but that's what she wanted her parents to know. So that explains a lot of who she was, but more important, of what she gave my brother and I. My brother is right here, my little brother. He was born 6 years after me. So, but I was born, now that I think about it, I was born so close to the war. But we didn't talk about it. It was all, I didn't realize any of it until much, much later. And but then when I realized about it, then I thought it was important that I shared it, and because in the meanwhile, I grew up, I married a German prince. How about that?
Can you say a word about diversity and mixing?
That's, I did. And she was totally fine with it. She loved him. He was half Italian, but he was a German aristocrat, a prince. And
so
I married.
You were a princess.
I became a princess, and so what were we saying? Yes, so that's that was. But she loved Aegon, and I always thought that that's a good thing to do. I believe in mixing, So then when you asked me to come here, I thought, oh, okay, so I'm going to speak about the Holocaust, knowing that I became a German princess in a city that has a Syrian refugee as a mayor.
That's right.
And as far as I'm concerned, that's a good thing.
Yes. So you've been incredibly successful. You lived many, many lives. You reincarnated several times. And what would you say is attributable to the values and the strength that your mother passed on to you?
She made me strong. She made us strong. And my father, if I don't speak about my father, my brother's going to get upset. So my father gave us, our father gave us love, and our mother gives us strength. and what today in my life, I really honor life, and I thank God for having given my mother the courage, the strength, but also the luck, you know, because she was lucky.
You say something quite you say lots of fascinating things in the book that you wrote, which is The Woman I Wanted to Be. And you say that she owes part of her survival to the fact that she was petite and that she could actually survive.
Well, she was skinny. And she used to tell me that the fat people died faster. But I don't know. She was petite, she was quick, she was smart. She looked at people in the eyes. I don't know. I don't know.
And she made the choice.
But she survived.
Yeah.
And because she survived, she left between me and the children and the grandchildren, and my brother, the children and the grandchildren. How many? 14? So 14 people. And each one of the 14 people, we carry that flame. We carry the flame of survival, and we honor life. It's about honoring life.
And resilience. And the fact that she said when she was arrested that she was Jewish was a deliberate choice in order not to be subject to torture and have to confess the names of those who missioned her to deliver messages between the people in the underground. Yeah. Talk about courage.
I should talk about courage?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if I can talk about courage, but I can talk about fear.
Yeah.
And not having fear, and about dealing it and owning it, you know, owning whatever's happening, but what I have discovered, what I think, you know, for me, when I was growing up, all that matters was that I would become a woman in charge, okay? I wanted to be a woman in charge. I wanted to have a man's life in a woman's body, blah, blah, blah. I became a woman in charge very early, in my mid-20s, because of a little dress. And because it was a little dress, that confidence that I had gained was passed on to millions of women. So very early on, I had a dialogue. I took a voice, and I used my voice, and I was very lucky because I've never lied. So for you who are young, don't lie. Because if you don't lie, nobody can blackmail you. So I was very, so anyway, I lost my train of thought. So I wanted to be a woman in charge. I became a woman in charge. Then I got very involved. It was women's liberation. I got very involved in women and women's causes. I created an award for women. So women has always been my thing. But lately, I discovered something new. I discovered the power of kindness. And kindness, which is very appropriate to talk about, kindness is a currency. And therefore it's very appropriate to talk about it in this building. And like a currency, it compounds. And it compounds, and generosity is the best investment. And I mean, before you'd say, oh, elle est gentille, she's nice, and she's kind. But kindness is strength. Yes, it is a virtue, but it's also a trick. It's also a tool. And I have decided that for the later part of my life, I want to promote kindness. And I put on your seat, I have a little manifesto. For example, every day, and you can all do it, don't read it now, you read it later. And every morning, I make sure that I do one miracle. And very often I do more than one. By introducing someone to someone who can change their life and that they would have never met without my introduction. And with the internet, you don't need to speak, you don't need to leave a message, you don't need to disturb anyone. All you need is to write a thoughtful email explaining, and miracle happens. Last year I was at Davos and they gave me a prize. I don't know why they gave me a prize, but they gave me a prize. And that was not my audience. It was all men, all finance and all of that. And I told, but at the end of when I thanked, at the end of it I said, before I go, I want to share something that I do with every day, and maybe because you're all so powerful, you could do it too. And I said to you, and would you believe that I stayed in Davos 5 days, and I must have had a dozen of people come to me and said, I did it today. So that's connect. So to connect is really important. Step number 2 is expand. Give quality time once a week to someone that you may see all the time but you really not talk to, but not condescending just by being polite, but just find out something about them. It'll make them feel good, but more important, it's going to expand your horizon. You may find something that you wouldn't know and create magic. Number 3 is inspire. There's nothing that's more inspiring than storytelling. We know that with social media, storytelling is a big deal. But storytelling, what is inspiring on storytelling is your failures, your vulnerability. Like, for example, every time I have a friend of mine who gets fired, or who is on the verge of bankruptcy, or who has a bad article in the press, I always call them and I say, cherish this moment because it will be your best anecdote when you go and do your TED Talk. And then the 4th one, obviously, is advocate. Find causes that you like and that you engage to. And anyway, so this is my little kindness thing. It's just the beginning of it, but voilà.
So, yeah. Does it occur sometimes that maybe your mother and your father, but your mother in particular, are somewhere watching? And do you ask yourself, would she be pleased with me?
Yeah, but we covered everything, so she is with me. And my mother was not the kind of person that she was so, she wouldn't tell me that she was proud of me. She would tell other people. My children.
Why do you think she wouldn't tell you?
I don't know, but I don't care. I mean, I don't know. But
of course you care.
Yeah, but the thing is that the most important relationship in life is the relationship you have with yourself. Once you have that, every other relationship is a plus and not a must. And she made me not being needy, and that was a big gift. you know. So, of course, she was proud of me. But she was very annoying. She would always give advice to everyone. And now, it used to annoy me so much, but now I am 100 times worse. And I quote her all the time. So it's, you know, you carry on. And she gave it to my daughter and my granddaughter. She got to know 3 of my grandchildren. So, you know, you pass, all we are is energy. And so, you know, you continue the energy
But she gave you huge confidence.
Yes, and by the way, my parents are, even though they were no longer living together, they're buried together. And what we said on the stone, we said, we thank our mother for giving us the strength and our father to give us the love.
I think your brother is agreeing with that, actually. He's nodding. So, Diane, thank you so much for sharing all that with all of us. We are very, very grateful, and we will give you a huge round of applause in a second. And then we will proceed to the memorial where we will remember and we will pay tribute. But before we do that, and on behalf of the ECB, there is a special token of appreciation that will be presented, which is a little funny, I know, because it is not yet planted. But let me tell you the story. Because you celebrate life as much as remembrance, and because a tree is a symbol of the roots for the remembrance, and what will blossom and will turn into a beautiful magnolia, this is actually a tribute to you. And this is a tree that
it already has little buds.
You see, that's life. It's for you. So
thank you.
This tree is in your honor as an expression of our gratitude, and it will be the first of many other trees, particularly magnolias, because apparently they will grow well next to the memorial. And this particular tree will be named in honor of your mother. So it will be called Lili Namias.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues, friends, excellencies, dear Diane, dear Philip, as we gather here today at the Jewish memorial of the Grossmarkthalle, we are reminded of the darkest chapter in human history, the Holocaust. In 1933, Frankfurt was renowned for its vibrant and long-established Jewish community. The city was home to more than 30,000 Jews, many of whom lived here in Ostend. The same year, 1933, however, the Nazis came to power and set in train a series of catastrophic events that culminated in the systemic murder of 6 million Jewish men, women, and children. Very few could hide from this terror, for when terror becomes a state policy, it can unlock any door. By the end of the Second World War, only 150 members of the city's Jewish population remained. The Grossmarkthalle played a dark role during this time, serving as an assembly point for the deportation of thousands of Jews on trains to concentration and extermination camps. Indeed, a portion of the old railway tracks remains to this day not far from where we stand. So why are we here? We're here for two reasons. One is to remember, two is to resist. To remember because we have to honor the memory of those who lost their lives, lives that came to be measured by the experiences that were never to be had, the friendships that were never to be formed, and the years that were never to be lived. But in today's world, it's not enough to remember and to honor the memories. We are also here to resist, to take a stand against the rise of antisemitism and other exclusions. There is no doubt that the forces of intolerance are on the march today. But hatred and racism have no place in our society. Europe has been down this road before, and we know where it takes us. So we must actively defend the values that we once took as given, granted. Values such as respect for human rights, dignity, freedom, democracy, equality, and the rule of law. These are the values for which the European Union stands, and the lessons of our history are deeply embedded within them. The main building of the European Central Bank represents this very well. Each day, staff from around Europe come together to work on delivering price stability for European citizens, for today and in the future. Yet, they are surrounded by evidence of Europe's turbulent past, not least the Grossmarkthalle itself. It embodies the evolution of Europe over the past 100 years. It has transitioned from a site that once facilitated the destruction of innocent lives, torn apart by artificial divisions, to one that today represents a Europe that is united, a Europe that works together on common goals and celebrates its diversity, the mixing, as you called it yourself, Diane. Many today are worried that the world is becoming a much more dangerous place. What I take heart from, however, is that these changes in the world are concentrating mind in Europe. There are many of us who think that this is a wake-up call and a wake-up time for Europe. So we are no longer taking our European values for granted. We are not only remembering, we do remember, but we also know that we must defend those values, and that we will. Thank you very much. Mrs. Hartwig, the floor is yours.
Dear President Lagarde, dear Mrs. von Fürstenberg, dear Professor Wenzel, dear Uwe Becker, dear Rabbi Susan, ladies and gentlemen. Is it loud enough? To be at a place which is so important for the history of the city, it's an honor for me, especially on the occasion of Remembrance Day. First of all, I would like to thank the European Central Bank that commemorates every year on January 27th, particularly the history of more than 10,000 Jewish people from Frankfurt and surroundings who were tortured, humiliated, and forced to leave their homes. Most of them forever. In 2011, the European Central Bank, the Jewish community, and the city of Frankfurt agreed on a memorial that commemorates this part of Frankfurt's history every day. The monument contains quotes of the persecuted. Reading these words, we can empathize with the fear of the unknown, the deep sorrow to leave beloved people, and the pain to be treated like inferior people. I don't know what lies before me. Maybe that's good. The 19-year-old Ernst Ludwig Oswald wrote these words in a farewell letter to his friends. 3 days before, he was told to leave Frankfurt by a simple letter. Although the young man, who was usually called Lux, had already suffered a lot from Nazi terror, he still tried to stay calm and confident. Like so many others, he was forced to go to the Grossmarkthalle, where several of the persecuted waited for a journey to the unknown. Most of them were understandably scared. In 1941, Berta Oppenheimer began to write a farewell letter to her children, but had to stop because she wasn't able to continue. Most of the people who were deported didn't return. The request to leave Frankfurt was equivalent to a death sentence, just like what happened to Ernst Ludwig Oswald. He was deported to an extermination camp in 1942 and murdered the same year. The farewell letters of Ernst Ludwig Oswald, Berta Oppenheimer, and many other testimonies of victims and survivors can be read every single day in this area. But the 27th of January is a special occasion to give them a voice and to be aware of our responsibility to commemorate and never forget them. In Germany, Federal President Roman Herzog established the Day of Remembrance 30 years ago in 1996. In 2005, the United Nations designated the date as International Holocaust Remembrance Day. These decisions may seem late, but clearly show us that the culture of remembrance is a process that is constantly changing and does not only refer to our past, but to our present and future as well. The monument that commemorates the destinies of so many Jewish people being deported from Frankfurt has one significant message. Deportations were not a hidden act. They were seen by many people. Deportations happened while other people went about their daily lives. The responsibility of remembrance rests on all of our shoulders to stand against anti-Semitism, hate, and discrimination. Going to the Grossmarkthalle and being deported, the victims were often watched by curious people. Some of them didn't say anything, others insulted them. Those were the last impressions of their hometown before the persecuted were locked up in a cellar, were abused and robbed. Tilly Kahn compared the way to this place with running a gauntlet. Edith Erbrich, who was deported as a child but survived the Shoah, wrote in her memoirs that she has to think every single day of the day of her deportation. It is our duty to not just watch injustice, but to look at and stand against it. We cannot tolerate hate and exclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, the 27th of January is a symbol for millions of people who were murdered in Auschwitz-Birkenau and many other places. Be human was the central message of Margot Friedländer, who passed away last year at the age of 103. This sounds obvious, but it is not something we can take for granted. We have to pay close attention on how we interact and talk to each other. We have to be respectful and kind. That's what the past has taught us. Thank you.
Dear President Lagarde, Ms. von Fürstenberg, Dr. Hartwig, Mr. Becker, Rabbi Soussan, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, around 8 years ago, I met the psychologist Bernie Graham from Plymouth, England, for the first time, right here in this cellar. He had decided to find out more about the history of his family at the places where his relative had lived and where they were tormented and murdered. In the context of a BBC documentary, My Family, the Holocaust and Me. Bernie's mother grew up in Frankfurt. In 1939, she escaped certain death on one of the Kindertransports to England. In the context of the BBC documentary, Bernie not only decided to finally visit the city where his German Jewish family came from, furthermore, his travel brought him to Germany for the first time. In the meantime, he has taken German citizenship and we became friends, but that's another story. The BBC asked me to meet Bernie Graham at this site in order to explain to him what his family members had experienced from 1938 until 1942. I was supposed not only to talk, but to hand over several documents to him that the team of the BBC and my colleagues had found in several archives. Bernie's grandparents, the Federmans, had 7 children. They lived in Rechnay-Grabenstraße, where his grandfather, Solomon Federman, had a hat-making business until 1937. Arrested during the November pogrom in 1938, Solomon was taken to Buchenwald concentration camp, where he was most severely maltreated and lost one eye. After 3 months, he was relieved. With the help of the Jewish Refugee Committee, he could flee to England, as could 4 of his children who arrived shortly before him. For the rest of his life, he could only see with one eye, hardly move one arm, and was severely hearing impaired. Bernie was named after Solomon's son Bernhard Federmann, who in 1938 was deported and murdered in Dachau concentration camp. He was only 19 years old. Bernie's grandmother, Sabine Federmann, didn't manage to escape together with her husband to England. She remained here in Frankfurt and was compelled to work as a forced laborer. On 11th June 1942, she was obliged to come to this cellar, pay 50 Reichsmark as the train fare, hand in her identity cards and apartment keys, and undergo humiliating body searches, all too often conducted violently with brute force. She spent the night in this cellar together with around 1,200 Jews. On the morning of 12th of June 1942, while the sale of fruit and vegetables in the Grossmarkthalle continued as usual, Sabine Federmann was herded into the tracks together with all the other Jewish men and women and deported to the trains to the Lublin district. It is most likely that no one from this transport survived the Holocaust. Since the Gestapo destroyed many of the documents, we know relatively little about the 6 mass deportation leaving from this place in June 1942. But we did find out one thing while preparing for the BBC documentary on the history of Bernie's family. Although the transport ended in Ibiza transit ghetto, for Sabine Federmann and many others of those that were transported, that was just an intermediate stop on the way to Sobibor, where she was murdered. After arriving at the gates of this extermination camp, the deportees only remained alive for around another 60 minutes before their certain death. The Sobibor extermination camp had begun with its systematic mass murder shortly before the 6th mass deportation arrived from Frankfurt. The guards in Sobibor comprised around 150 men, 30 members of the SS, and a number of collaborators. Around 1,000 inmates, including 150 women, were forced to help them in mass murder, which continued for approximately 1.5 years. In autumn 1943, the camp was razed to the ground. All traces of the mass murders at this site should be erased for the years to come. Forensic archaeological investigations only began on this site around 10 years ago. The finds include bones, skull teeth, and much more, as well as a pendant amulet belonging to Caroline Kohn, born in Frankfurt in 1928, and inscribed with the Hebrew word for life, chai. Over 250,000 people were murdered in Sobibor, including the girl Caroline Kohn, born in the same year as Anne Frank, and Sabine Federman, Bernie Graham's grandmother. When he started out on his journey to Frankfurt, Bernie already knew his grandmother had died in an extermination camp, but he had hoped to the last that she had the opportunity to take her own life. It was extremely difficult for me to tell him what his grandmother went through while we were standing in exactly this place. His disbelief and anger were only too plain to see. The BBC documentary, My Family, The Holocaust and Me, captured the moment when Bernie heard for the first time the story of his grandmother. But the documentary is not only dedicated to the Holocaust history, the sites where it took place, and the biographies of some persons of the approximately 6 million Jews that were systematically murdered in the years from 1941 to 1945. It also tells how these fates still have an impact today in the families of those who survived. Diane von Fürstenberg already gave us an impressive insight into how the fate of her mother, Lily, was passed on to her. One person whose father survived, whereas the grandfather was deported from here and murdered in Auschwitz, is present with us today. It is the photographer Ruti Zunz. Her father, Shimon, was rescued due to another kinder transport organized by the Youth Aliyah program that led him to the British Mandate of Palestine. In nearly 500 letters to his daughter, Shimon Zunz recounted his childhood memories of Frankfurt. His account provided the starting point for the What a Family exhibition on show in the Jewish Museum Frankfurt at the moment. In her search for traces of her family in this city, Ruti often came across relatives who were murdered as well. In her exhibition, she did not only find a forum to commemorate them, she also keeps on coming to Frankfurt and thereby reconnecting to her family history. For Bernie, too, the story of his family did not end with the BBC documentary. He helped designing an education project for schools based on the biographical journeys that the documentary sets into scene. Today, this project has been enrolled at over 250 schools in the UK, reaching nearly 7,500 students. The educational material developed for this school project ends with the same message as our What a Family exhibition. They both call on visitors and students to reflect on their own family histories and pose their own questions to Ruti and Bernie. It is precisely this process of actively relating in the present to the past of others that defines Jewish practice of memory. And only through relating to the lives of those that were murdered, we can understand this violent rupture and painful absence in the midst of Jewish families, as well as in European culture and civilization as a whole. Both the trauma and the loss has shaped the idea of a united and peaceful Europe. May these ideas stay alive as the legacy of all those that perished in the Holocaust. Thank you for your attention.
Chère Madame la Présidente, dear Ms. von Fürstenberg, Frau Stadträtin Dr. Hartwig, Frau Professor Wenzel, Ravina Soussan, dear members of the ECB and the European family, distinguished guests. As we gather here in this very special occasion, we can really feel the coldness of the society in the darkest chapter of German history. And I express the deep thanks of the State of Hessen to the European Central Bank, and especially also to you, Mrs. President. One can feel your personal commitment to commemorate, and to speak out about remembering and taking a stand for responsibility. The deportations took place in front of everyone's eyes. The march of the Jewish Frankfurters from the fairground, the Festhalle, here towards the Grossmarkthalle, has been seen by everyone, just as the burning synagogues of November 1938 could be seen by everyone. They were exclamation marks for what was happening. And one could just not see by looking away, by not listening. But as we know that at the same time where people were here put together like animals, the regular work continued right above. And this image, this picture, having in mind, shows us how deep the moral abyss of inhumanity was in a time where people were speaking about the poets, about the arts, the culture, while at the same time inhumanity was ruling in the streets. And this march was a march of shame for the city because of its very strong Jewish history and Jewish tradition. We commemorate in a time where, again, Jews live in fear. In Germany, in Europe, in other parts of the world, in fear to present and show their belief. Let me ask all of you one question. Did you think this morning when you dressed, if your clothes could endanger your security, your health, or your life? You might ask what he is demanding. When I ask that question to Jewish families, they will say, yes, I was thinking if my girl could wear the Star of David on their necklace openly or within their shirt, if the son could wear the kippah, or better wear the baseball cap. Members of the Jewish community are asking the administration not to send the envelopes with the logo of the Jewish communities. People are afraid to tell the taxi driver or at the Uber ride where they want to go if they want to visit the synagogue or an Israeli restaurant. What sounds a bit like 1933 is Germany, is Europe 2026. 81 years after the liberation of Auschwitz, Jews are again packing their bags. This is not just a signal of alert. We are at it happens again. Not in the sense of federal politics, not in the sense of what is being given for by law, but what happens on the streets, what happens on campuses, what happens at so many places in culture, arts, science. What have been waves of anti-Semitism over decades has become a tsunami of anti-Semitism on open spots. Besides all form of right-wing anti-Semitism and others, especially Israel-related anti-Semitism has become a dominant form. And no debate, no discussion about politics in the Middle East justifies the spread of hatred against Jews in Germany, in Europe, or elsewhere. Very often, when the word Israel or Zionism is used, it's a detour and means Jews. And that has to stop. We as a society has to show much more empathy for Jewish life and much more engagement against anti-Semitism. Otherwise, the window of Jewish life in Europe will close. Sorry for telling it this hard, but I think that's the situation that we're just right in. Today we have a day of commemoration, but there are 364 more days to come to take a stand and to act. Silence is no opinion. Silence is no option. Watching is no option. The past surrounds us and teaches us that the ways lead to tracks, and that tracks led to a mass murder. And even in a city like Frankfurt, the most Jewish city in Germany, with this strong Jewish history and contribution to the development, Frankfurt would look totally different without the contribution of so many Jewish Frankfurters than it looks today. And even in this city, it happened. And the Nazis chose Frankfurt for things even more to happen. Europe is in danger, Europe is at risk. But with this strong signal that you, Madame la Présidente, are showing by taking this very strong stand, you show that everyone can do something, as a single person or as an institution. And the European Central Bank plays a crucial role, you said it, because you are one of the strongest pillars in the House of Europe. People believe in the politics of the European Central Bank and trust not only in monetary policy, not only in price stability, but in all what is behind and what makes this landmark here so important. And on the ground of this landmark, having this place brings a very special connection, and thanks in the name of the state of Hessen that you are playing this role. We owe it not only to those who we remember today, we owe it also to our Jewish neighbors of today. Thank you very much for your attention.
Dear Madame la Présidente Lagarde, dear Madame de Fürstenberg, dear Uwe Becker, dear Frau Hartwig, dear Mirjam, Wenzel, dear all of you, our cantor Ganon is going to sing the praise and the prayer for all those who perished in the Shoah. I wanted to give you an understanding of what we are praying, so I read you the translation. God full of passion, who dwells on high, grant refuge beneath your divine presence to the souls of the holy ones who were slain, the men and women and children of Israel and all the other righteous people who were murdered, slaughtered, suffocated, drowned, and buried alive, who perished by hunger and by thirst, who were shot, hanged, and burned, who were killed in the days of destruction by the Nazis, Simach Shemam, and all their willful helpers. We remember all those murdered in Auschwitz-Birkenau, in Treblinka, Majdanek, Sobibor, in Belzec, Chelmno, and in all of the other camps and ghettos of devastated Europe. May their souls be bound in the bond of life. The eternal shall be their inheritance. May they rest in peace in their place of repose. And let us say Amen.
El Malei Rachamim Shochen Bameromim Ametzeh Menucha Nechona Ale Kanefei Shekhinah B'malot Kedoy וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מאירים ומזהירים לנשמות 6 מיליוני אחינו בני ישראל, אנשים, נשים וילדים וילדות שנהרגו, שנשחטו, שנשרפו, שנחנקו ושנטבעו ושנקברו חיים בידי הנאצים ועוזריהם יימח שמם באושוויץ, בירקנאו, מיידנק, טרבלינקה, מאוטהאוזן ובשאר מחנות ההשמדה בארצות אירופה, שמסרו את נפשם על קדושת השם. בעבור שאנו מתייחדים עם זכרם הקדוש ומתפללים לעילוי נשמותיהם. לכן ולרחמים יסתירם בסתר כנפיו לעולמים, וייצרו בצרור החיים את נשמתם בגן עדן, בגן עדן תהיה מנוחתם, אדוני הוא נחלתם. ארץ אל תכסי את דמם, ואל יהי מקום לזעקם, וינוחו בשלום על משכבם, ונאמר אמן.
The next song Menachem is going to sing is Ani Ma'amin. And the story tells that the composer of the song was actually on his way to Treblinka in one of the cattle trains. And he composed this song, and they sang it in the compartments, and more people joined in. And he said, whoever survives this, please bring it to my Rebbe. There was a Hasidic Rebbe, his Rebbe, Rabbi Taub, Shaul Taub, who himself made his way through Lithuania and China to the United States. And really one of the survivors brought this music, this melody back. But the text itself is a text which is far older. It's one of the 13 articles of faith composed by Maimonides, the Rambam, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon in the 12th century. And the text says, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shelema, I believe with a complete belief, with complete faith, that the Messiah, Mashiach, will come. And Rambam himself writes in other books that the Messiah doesn't mean a magic person. It doesn't mean another world or another place. It's this world, but it's going to be a world without violence, without hatred, without cruelty. without wars. I believe with complete faith that the Messiah will come. And although he delays every day, I believe he'll come. That's our Jewish resilience. We believe in the future. We find hope in the darkest of the nights. We have no other choice. Ani Maamin.
Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ve'emunah sheleima bevi'yad HaMashiach, bevi'yad HaMashiach. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Be'emunah sheleima u'bevi'yad HaMashiach, bevi'yad HaMashiach. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Be'emunah sheleima u'bevi'yad HaMashiach, bevi'yad HaMashiach. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Ani Maamin. Be'emunah sheleima u'bevi'yad HaMashiach, bevi'yad HaMashiach. Ani Maamin. ואף על פי שיתממע אם כל זה אחכה לו, ואף על פי שיתממע אם כל זה אני מאמין.